Well, let me figure this out. I'll give you a call back. Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay. Bye.
Hey, you were reading a different book this morning.
Alana, can you mute all? We're hearing a lot of people's private talk. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to APSAC's second Zoom chat being developed in response to the request that we've been getting to provide an opportunity for collegial sharing and information processing among members of APSAC that have all different kinds of questions and concerns right now. My name is Janet Rosenzweig. I'm the Executive Director of APSAC. We'll be joined today by two of APSAC's board members, Stacy LeBlanc and Jamor Maddox will be joining us to help with the Q question and answer period. This is our second one of these Zoom chats. Last week's was very successful, and which is why we're here today, and we'll keep these going as long as everybody here is interested. We had more than 100 people sign up, which is just amazing. We hope maybe we'll get Alana to tell us how many people actually are joining us today. But Alana, if you can move to the next slide.
Sure, we have 118 people joining us today.
That's fabulous. So this slide is our agenda for today. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about a Washington update and what we know what's happening on the federal level. We'll also be happy to take any questions that you might have if we could answer. We did put people on mute all. If you want to jump in with a question, we encourage you to use the chat box or unmute yourself. We just didn't want to leave everybody unmuted because we were getting feedback and some personal chat that I'm not sure was meant to be shared. So if there's a hand raising option somewhere, see that, but I would urge you to make sure that you have your chat box showing so that you could jump in and ask questions. Throughout the course of our hour together, Bree Stormer, who's with us, she's our manager of publications and special projects. Bree will be putting in real time out in the chat box links to a lot of the resources we're going to be talking about today, and any resource that we mention on this call today will be on the APSAC's on the APSAC website, apsac.org. If you click on resources, in the drop-down menu, you'll see a link for COVID-19 resources, and we've got quite a few there. That list is getting pretty extensive. Hi. I don't know if that was a question or if somebody just wasn't muted. Okay, so let me start by giving a Washington update, which I'm probably not going to take too much time because an awful lot of what happened in Washington yesterday is all over the major newspapers.
Yeah, I know, when I kind of discovered Wi-Fi calling.
I'm sorry, Alana, would you mind hitting mute all? We've got someone with two phone conversations.
It is actually better, but
okay. So you should be able to hear me, but not other folks, which is great. Yesterday, both the Senate and the House both agreed on a very, very large aid bill that's going to be specific for helping people in response to what happened to COVID-19. An interesting piece for advocates is that originally, there was a clause in the bill that specifically prohibited any of the aid and to go to nonprofits, which was kind of devastating to those of us in the field. And it's very important to know that we've got a very good voice in Washington. It's an advocacy group called the National Child Abuse Coalition, of which APSAC is a member. And the National Child Abuse Coalition really mobilized a lot of networks, and there was a very strong campaign to make sure that that particular clause was taken out. But let me tell you a couple of things relevant to our work that were included in the aid package. And there's $45 million for Title 4B, which is child welfare, directly into CPS. There's $45 million that goes for Family Violence Prevention Services Act, so that was included. $2 million for extra services on the domestic violence hotlines. $25 million for runaway and homeless youth programs, and $1 billion. This is the big news for the Community Service Block Grant. CSBG, Community Service Block Grant, is a type of funds that has been around since the Great Society time of the 60s, and it is a major source of grants that come to nonprofits through their local governments. So these aren't grants that people can apply for. Rather, within your community, probably your city, maybe your county is already administering a community service block grant program, and there's an additional $1 billion is coming down through that means, which really to me is kind of a policy wonk, and a student of this stuff is very much back to the future, because CSBG is really one of the first and oldest ways of bringing financial aid directly to communities. So for the academics among us, that's kind of an interesting point. The other thing that people might be very interested in is that the CARES package, which is an acronym I forget completely, but it has to do with virus relief. The C obviously is for coronavirus, but there will be direct payments made right to families and individuals of $1,200 per individual and up to $2,400 per married couple, and an additional $500 per each child in the family. And it is means tested, but families who earn, married filing jointly up to $198,000 will qualify for that direct aid. So that's kind of the good news of things that we're looking at that's going to be providing some relief. So that's the biggest news from Washington. Actually, Bree put, if you look in the chat box, you'll see the National Child Abuse Coalition put together a document which is the summary of the provisions of the CARE Act, summaries developed by about 5 different national child serving organizations. So if you really want some detail, please download that document. And if you can't grab it off of the chat because you've joined us by phone, it'll be on our COVID-19 resource page at apsac.org resource tab. So without further ado, I don't see any questions popping up in the chat box. Alana, would you unmute folks for a minute just to see if there are any questions? Okay, so everybody is unmuted. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to take them now. Okay, well, hearing none, it is my pleasure to turn. It is my pleasure to turn this over to Stacy LeBlanc. She is the APSAC President-elect and Executive Director of the UP Institute, which focuses on preventing abuse and supporting health and resilience in kids and families. So Stacy.
Hi, y'all. I'm hoping you can hear me. I see some silent and familiar faces. Thank you so much for joining us during these unbelievably challenging times. Finding ways.
Alana, I might ask you to mute folks, and then Stacy, you're going to have to unmute.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now, Stacy. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. But now I got to go back to start broadcast. And I'm getting a countdown, 2, 3, 1, maybe.
We see your screen.
You do see my screen. That's great, because I don't. It just decided to go away. But we want to welcome everybody. I'm hoping that I'll see my screen shortly. To being here with us and tell you a little bit about what we're doing. But one of the first questions that we had seen with Alana and Janet, thank you so much for that Washington update. We also noted that many of you had asked questions about what are folks doing to celebrate Child Abuse Prevention Month in this difficult time. So we would like to start there by asking you in this chat to sort of give us, do you have any ideas or any of you would like to share what you're doing? If you could type into the Zoom chat, or if we want to take it off mute as I try to figure out what happened to my screen. I'm glad y'all can see my screen though, but I can't. Does anybody have anything to share about what they're doing or any alternative plans that you're doing? So you guys can see my actual, no.
So Stacy, what we can see is it says you are sharing screen and it's got a little Wi-Fi signal.
I'm sorry.
Let me see who's calling.
I don't know what happened. Well, let me see if I can go here.
There we go.
We got it
Is
works, Stacy.
Yes, thank you. Okay, fabulous. So we wanted to start here. So plans for April Child Abuse Prevention Month. And I think I just saw Wendy is asking us that she had drafted an activity events calendar, and we're switching that up to in-home family activities and resources, which is such a great idea. And we do have some that we can share. Are you guys getting an echo? So we do have some that we can share. I actually teach a CAS course at Tulane University, and I have a group of interns that are actually currently working on some resources to give to families. And, you know, we would love to know if others have folks that they can share. And if you do, if you could send them to Bree, that would be fabulous. So I also see Tricia is telling us that Utah is putting together a press release, hoping that news will want to pick up something more positive. It includes info about the 5 and how to implement them, as well as any specific times for right now. So that sounds fabulous, and I hope, Tricia, you can share that. Janet's adding to everyone that if your agency has pinwheels, maybe we can send them to staff members who can have pinwheel gardens in their own lawn. And along with that, I'd like to share what my CAS course has come up with. So we had previously planned and to do an exhibit at Tulane in our quad. We had engaged 3 different universities, and we were going to have an exhibit that illustrated all the children who had been lost in the previous year in Louisiana with shoes that resembled the sizes and ages. And all of our students had gone out and collected shoes, and they had come up with all kind of childhood games, and they were going to have an entire field day on campus. We had engaged multiple sororities, fraternities, youth groups, and the Student Learning Center and Service Center. And we had a bunch of folks that were all involved to do that on April 1st. But we've changed that into a virtual event since we've taken our teaching virtual. And we're going to be instead hosting something online through Zoom. Yes. So we want to invite others to join us. And as part of that, APSAC is joining into that with a hashtag APSAC goes blue for you. And we would love to invite folks. And so what we're doing is sending out just this target that folks can hold up and, you know, print out and hold up, join us for the event, and print out what they stand for. So I raise awareness for Child Abuse Prevention Month, and as a result, I will. And what are they doing as part of their Child Abuse Prevention Month? And it sounds like many of you already have a lot of ideas about what you are going to be doing. So I see like someone else is going to be mailing out their pinwheels. And pins and pinwheels. What a fabulous idea. So that's something you could share and join this group. So we'll have this Zoom call, and we're asking folks to post a picture. Some people don't want to post a picture of their face. They can post a picture with their furry loved ones, or whomever else they would like to share, potentially maybe even their coworkers, their children at this point. So one of the other students came up with the idea, I will wear my silliest blue outfit to bring attention for Child Abuse Prevention Month because I'm concerned about the 42 children who died in Louisiana, because I've heard about this. So whatever their reason is, to fill in that blank. And one of the things that Janet and Jamar had asked me to highlight for today is, what are we doing to address physical abuse? So I know many of us are concerned. National news is sort of telling us that we're seeing spikes. I know as child abuse professionals, we all fear there are going to be spikes in physical abuse, and we already have some medical providers indicating that they're seeing these spikes, and national news is presenting that. So I think all of us as professionals are fearing this, and what can we do to address it? So I'd like to just start with an initiative that was started by one of our dear board members, Dr. Mel Schneiderman, and he had created a national initiative to end corporal punishment. He gathered many of us 2 years ago now, and who kind of researched in the field of corporal punishment being a primary risk factor for child physical abuse. And we came up with a document about how we're addressing this in a national initiative campaign. And the reason for that is we already knew as professionals that there was this unbelievable correlation, and that spanking, of course, raises the odds of physical abuse by 3 times, and if a parent uses an object. And we do fear right now with stressed out parents, this could even get higher. We knew in our journal of maltreatment, child maltreatment, that APSAC publishes, that it was indicated that social norms, our acceptance regarding physical discipline, may be one of the most prevalent risk factors for child abuse. And then we had, of course, the article, that one article of the year that indicated that spanking is actually an ACE. And what could we do about this? So one of the things that I want to give complete credit to a child abuse pediatrician at Rainbow Babies, Dr. Lally, many years ago, came up with something called no-hit zones. She's like, you know what, we reduced smoking, and her picture's right there in that left-hand corner, by hanging up signs saying no smoking signs. What if we did the same thing for hitting of children? Because so many pediatricians, nurses, and medical providers were saying they were seeing it in their hospitals. So they started hanging up these signs, and they felt like they saw a reduction, and they also felt like staff felt more confident that they could approach without shame or blame a family to help them understand the harms of hitting, to reduce this. This has since been evaluated many, many years later. Dr. Gershoff and her group, who would really have studied the long-term harms of physical discipline, they went out and said that no-hit zones really have the most considerable promise for changing attitudes around this. So at a time when we know that we have increased stress in families, we have increased, risk factors in homes, this is such a great time for us to try to bring this message from organizations to homes. So in APSAC, we had developed a task force with Dr. Alexander, Deb Sendek, Melinda, a whole group of us had formed a national task force, wrote an article that's free. You can get this on the APSAC website. If you go there, you can actually obtain this article for free. And it basically explains how you and your organization could become a no-hit zone and the simple steps to doing this. Now, what we know about spanking is that 51% of parents, according to Dr. Finkelhorst's latest study, no longer spank in the last year, or say they don't report having spanked in the last year. But when you look at, they actually, over 70% say they actually have spanked their toddlers. So we know toddlers are still highly at risk, but we are seeing a reduction. And this reduction is mostly associated with explaining to parents the harms of hitting. So explaining to them the research. Dr. Holden, George Holden out of Texas, has indicated that understanding the accumulating research findings appears to change attitudes. So as a result of this, I want to tell you about some new resources that APSAC has developed, our national no-hit zone committee has developed, and you can access these on our website. The one in the middle of the page you can fully access. The ones by developmental stage you can actually order at a discount. If you went to go print them at your local Office Depot, it would cost you more money. Then you can buy them for bulk from APSAC to be able to disseminate them, or even purchase the for minimal cost the PDF to send out to folks. So it's a great opportunity to bring that out. But what's important is it highlights the research that we know about spanking. It explains what we know that parents are most listening to, but it gives them alternatives. And it gives them alternatives by developmental level. So for the parents of an infant, hitting an infant will make them cry more. Parents of a teenager, spanking a child because you suspect they're sexting is not going to stop that behavior. Spanking a school-age child because of poor grades isn't going to improve the grades. Here are some things that will really help. So these are the kind of resources APSAC is developing, and we'd love to know from all of you, what other resources do you need in homes right now that you feel like we could help with the development of? And we also want to share at the end of this call some other ones that have been developed. I will tell you that in the development of these materials, we were very, very careful to understand from Dr. Gershoff's meta-analysis of over 1,574 studies that showed that spanking is harmful. What we know as child abuse professionals, it's very correlated to physical abuse, but that's not the thing that parents listen to the most. But we want to make sure that we cover them all. The other thing it's important to help parents understand is because a lot of parents say, well, I do it because it works. I know it might cause my child low self-esteem, but it works. And it's about explaining that in all the correlations, what it is correlated with, or not correlated with, I should say better, is immediate defiance. So, a parent will say, I tapped their hand. What does that mean? I hit their hand because they touched an outlet, but that child didn't touch that outlet. Did that child learn that the parent, that the outlet's dangerous, or did the child learn that the parent's dangerous? And so we're really seeing a different way of trying to explain this and explain to parents that, yes, we understand and we're sympathetic that you felt it worked, but we have to find a different way to deal with this. So we've also learned that telling parents about the harms to the brain, the Harvard Medical study, that this can be really, really helpful. So these materials, based on this, we've learned that what parents are most likely to listen to is that 38% talk about how these harms to the brain, knowing that it changes the gray matter, reduces the gray matter if children have been hit by a parent in emotional control just once a month, and that we need to be sympathetic to parents because they really do, research tells us, they really thought the child didn't defy them, so the child learned. So these resources, or you can use right now, these are resources you can go on APSAC's website and locate. You can get copies, less expensive than you could get them printed. And we are working really hard with a lot of different folks to try to see if we can get these uploaded to the clearinghouse and get grant funding to make these readily available to all of you. Now, the value of no-hit zones, if you want to know more about how to implement this, what's great is they can be implemented across the spectrum of prevention. And as we're approaching Child Abuse Prevention Month, this is an important piece. So we know that it's important when we're creating them that we also create policies. So now might be a great time to work on policies for implementing such. And we have created a toolkit where you can access sample policies for CACs, for schools, for hospitals. No-hit zones initially started in hospitals, but they have now grown to a lot of different locations. And so it's important to have a policy so that staff and volunteers all feel confident in approaching someone and saying, oh, because I wear this badge, I need to tell you, I'm so sorry, we're a no-hit zone. So that's an important piece in this. So having quality permanent signage, which is a great time now, you can take a look. We collect on our toolkit anyone that would share their signage. There's lots of examples. APSAC has designed some signage that you can also access. We also have some of our partners, so we know from some of the leading research that who parents will listen to most on this is their pediatricians, and second is their religious leaders. So 2 weeks ago, I was actually in Newark, or I was actually in Trenton, New Jersey at Shiloh Baptist Church, and working with Dr. Errol Armstrong and preacher, the head of that church, in bringing no-hit zones to his congregation. And I had many, many folks who were there visiting from different places who are now working on this. We also know that the Archdiocese in New Orleans has made all of their 80 archdiocesan schools no-hit zones. And the United States Catholic Bishops is sending out one of these signs with the dove to all of their safe environments to bring that. We've also made readily available for free for you on the toolkit a video of lots of leading experts talking about how to make a no-hit zone, why it's important, how this addresses physical abuse, how as child abuse professionals this is an essential piece, and how to easily do these steps. I'm really excited to say, in working with Dr. Taylor, who you can see in that second to left corner back over there, I can't point to it, that we have looked at folks who see this. We've looked at over 500 pre-post and follow-up posts to see, does watching this video alone with just the implementation of the policy and showing the policy, and it is changing attitudes. So we have some real promising results that this no-hit zone video can do this. And this is a free resource. It's a 22-minute video that you can go download today and share with anyone. And it has, you know, key pieces like Dr. Finkelhor talking how this is really a key. It's a keystone in helping to address changing violence in homes. So these are the resources. One of the things that Dr. Gershoff's research told us is that having resources for parents not only changes the attitudes of that key informant, but it also changes the attitudes of the parents. So as a result, APSAC and through our National Initiative to End Corporal Punishment has developed all of these resources for your use, and they are by developmental age. We hope that you might access them and give us feedback. So we're in the process right now of trying to get grant funding to even make them more readily available to our membership and all of you. So if you're interested in becoming a no-hit zone and bringing them to homes, you can register at www.nohitzone.com. You'll have samples policy, sample signage, the training video, and this is a great way to potentially, as part of your initiative in Child Abuse Prevention Month, to engage people around this key risk factor. So, and you can find all of these articles on APSAC's website. So I'd like to stop there and ask if people have questions about no-hit zones, and then we want to address all of your other questions that you had as part of this.
Okay. Stacy, there's a question in the chat box. What's the link to access the toolbox?
The toolbox is at www.nohitzone.com. So that is the whole toolbox. And when you register, it's like if you're interested or if you're a no-hit zone. If you are already a no-hit zone, with your permission, we put you on a map, and we have we map, and you can see the map there too. But I want to encourage you also to go to APSAC's website, and you can actually find the piece. And I'm sure that Bree can send you. Bree is so awesome at sending these things out, but send you the how you can access the materials. Jen, are there any other questions?
Anybody, Alana, do you want to unmute everybody so if there's questions we can hear them? Okay, everybody, you've been unmuted so we can take questions even if you're not on your computer and seeing the chat box.
Some may be wondering in this time period of social distancing and quarantine how families can get these materials into their home when they may not be out and about to actually see them posted. Stacy, do you have any ideas about that?
Well, one of the things that we're finding is that a lot of families are now seeking resources online. So there's a really great resource called www.stopspanking.org, And it has places where families can get connected. And there's a lot of learning groups that are online where we're trying to get them out to families directly. But what I'm hoping that is through CACs and the people you serve, this is a great time. You know, we've done a lot of training with bringing these into home visitors, especially child protection folks who are visiting families, you know, giving families, you know, resources at this time is so valuable for anyone that's home visiting, and then recognizing that a lot of families are seeking online. And we've been in contact with a lot of different groups and trying to disseminate through their websites.
Excellent. Having seen the PowerPoints, because I'm on the Zoom, I was getting nostalgic seeing our colleagues standing next to each other. It's been about 3 weeks since I stood next to a colleague. So that was nice to see. I think it's important to bear in mind that we're all anticipating this storm to pass. And this information is relevant because it can move digitally as a preventative force during this time of increased risk. And eventually, when we're all together again, it would be nice to have everyone involved in that. Any other questions or thoughts about this particular subject?
Hello, may I help you? Hello?
Yes. Do you have a question?
Hello, may I help you?
Yeah. This is Janet again. I'd just like
Hello?
to point out the gentleman speaking, even though his box,
This is the office of Harmon, O'Connor, and Bach.
wait, Alana,
Did
can
call
you
from
mute
here?
everybody and I'll unmute myself? Okay. So we're going to keep everybody muted, but if you want to speak, unmute yourself. The gentleman that just was speaking is Dr. Jamor Maddox. He's a member of the board of directors of APSAC. He's got another board member's name under his face. So I'm not quite sure how that
That's
happened.
right.
But Jamor, if you were with us last week, he also led the discussion. But if there's no other questions for Stacy, one of the things I'd like to take a minute and share with you is we got many questions before this call about telehealth and did a bunch of research yesterday and found some really good resources. And I'm going to look to Bree to start putting them in the chat box and add them to the resource page. I spent some time in the peer-reviewed literature, and probably the thing that I found was most useful where there's a professional society, similar to APSAC as a professional society, the American Association for Telehealth, and they've got practice guidelines for using telehealth for mental health services for children and adolescents. So we created a folder on Google, and we've got, in a minute or two, Bree will put out the link and share it. But in that Google folder, you're going to find the standards by the American Association for Telehealth. You're going to find 2 other peer-reviewed articles, one of which has somebody very close to APSAC, the editor of our journal, Dr. Dan Whitaker, as one of the experts. And if telehealth continues to be an issue, Dan said he would work with us to bring together people who he knows are doing the cutting-edge research on using telehealth in family assessments. So if that's an interest, please let us know in the chat box. Please let us know in the poll that we're going to share after this presentation. Questions, comments? Alana, if you want to unmute folks, and if folks have questions, now's another time we can jump in.
Real quick, there is a question in the chat box. Is it likely to become federal practice to allow telemental health from state to state? In Illinois, we have a state mandate to allow this, but if the other state does not allow it, we cannot provide services.
Well, when it comes to certain aspects of child protection, that's dictated by the state. When it comes to issues around insurance premiums, some of that is going to be decided nationally by CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. So I do think ultimately that there's going to be a federal rule that's going to make crossing state lines. You know, those of us that live right on a border have to deal with having clients or serving people in 2 states. So I have a feeling that because of the authority in CMS, that I could see where there's going to be a ruling that would make that happen. I mean, certain things are regulated by the state. For example, Child Protective Services investigations. That, as we discussed last week, has to be regulated state to state.
There's also something called the Psychology Interjurisdictional Compact, otherwise known as PSYPACT, and it's basically a bill or it's a set of language that different states can propose to their psychology board for adoption. The hope is that multiple states will get this language advanced and will join the pact. So if I'm licensed in New Jersey, and New Jersey is a PSYPACT state, I will be allowed to practice telehealth in other states that are also part of the pact. So if you Google Psychology Interjurisdictional Compact, you can see the various states that are currently committed to it. So when this takes effect, I believe in July, there won't be as many obstacles concerning licensure to practice telehealth across state lines.
Okay. Other questions? Oh, are you able to briefly recap last week's major points on assessing safety remotely? Jamora, you were leading that discussion. Are you comfortable doing a recap?
Yeah, I can do a brief recap. I think what I spoke to primarily dealt with New Jersey, which is the state that I'm practicing in. So here in New Jersey, the commissioner proposed some rules whereby workers will be assessing risk based on if someone has, first of all, been diagnosed with COVID-19 or has been in contact with someone who has, or has traveled to a place where it's known as a hotspot. And depending on the level of risk based on one's response to those questions, workers will decide where to go from there. If it's a high-risk family, then the workers will be provided with personal protective equipment, including gown, goggle, or face shield, mask, or respirator to go out to the home. If they're not deemed a high-risk family, then workers will just go out without their personal protective gear. And if it's a low-risk call, then workers will just handle it remotely and not go out to the home.
Jamor, there's another question for you. Will this psych pack have reciprocity or parity for licensed professional clinical counselors?
I believe it only pertains to psychologists at this point. I'm looking for my chat box here because I grabbed the link so I can share it. But there's a lot of names on the screen right now. I'm having trouble finding that box.
Jamor, if you move your cursor towards the bottom, you might see the bar with a couple of different options, including the chat box. That's what it looks like on my end anyway. If not, you can email it to me and I'll put it in the chat box.
Got it. Thanks, Bria. I found it.
For folks who can't see the chat box, I want to point out one of the things that I was very excited when we found yesterday was the Medical University of South Carolina offers a crash course on providing mental health services over distance, including 10-minute webinars, both in English and Spanish. We haven't seen these yet. We're not, this is not an endorsement by APSAC. It's rather us doing some of the searching for you. And if folks get to experience some of these resources, we would love on the next Zoom chat if you would give us your feedback as to what you found effective. And in fact, if there's something you have found particularly effective over the last couple of weeks, if you would kindly want to share that with folks. And I also see, if you've got the chat box, comments from Jamor Maddox are coming up as if they were written by Vince Pelusi, but Vince is another APSAC family member. But that what appears in the chat box is actually from Dr. Maddox, which is the link to the PsychPack articles.
Also just sent a link on interim guidance for DCF area response teams on the use of personal protective equipment. It goes through the New Jersey's commissioners and her team's guidelines on how our workers are responding in this state.
Yes, that brings to mind something that has come up on some of the national phone calls, which is as the epidemic spreads more widely, in different states have different regulations about whether child protective service workers are considered first responders, and that will impact whether or not they have access to PPE, personal protective equipment. I've heard in some states the CPS workers are like, leave us off that list. We really would rather not be going out. And I've heard in some states that the workers really want the advocates to make sure that people are in touch with the, emergency management systems in their state to make sure CPS are in that category. So that's one of those conversations that you could be taking back and talking with advocates and CPS folks in your own states to see where folks' opinions fall. Okay.
Any
Bree,
other questions?
Okay. Okay. Yes, please.
So I was just gonna, one of the things I don't know if folks have seen, our partners with NCA who provide guidance to all the children's advocacy centers and accreditate the children's advocacy centers, put out 3 new guidelines today. Some folks have been obviously working really hard pretty quickly, but they have teleforensic interview guidelines, health and safety in medical exam guidelines, when a medical exam has to go forward because a child has an acute finding, and how to protect all, and a guide to using medical masks for CAC safety. And so I'm gonna put a link in to help. Bree, you might have to correct me if I haven't done that. But that's a direct link to the medical guidelines, and they have forensic interviewing for telehealth also.
Great. Let's try unmuting everybody so folks can get in with a question. Okay, we've got everybody unmuted. If anybody else would like to jump in. I see a Jennifer Rodriguez. Are you? Nope. Your name lit up like you were trying to speak. Okay, well, a couple of other resources we found that we'd be happy to share. This one I did check out. There's an organization called the Child Wellness Institute of New Jersey, which is actually a division of Prevent Child Abuse New Jersey. And they're doing every Wednesday morning over Facebook Live at 8:30 Eastern, Wednesday Wellness, which is a really sweet little kind of yoga, exercise, meditation, self-regulation class for kids between the ages of 5 and 11. And I was so intrigued with the concept, I did log in and take a look at it yesterday. And I would urge you to do the same thing, Child Wellness Institute of New Jersey on Facebook Live. Take a look at it, and if you like it, that might be something you could share with some of the parents that you might be in touch with virtually as a nice way to kind of do an activity with their kids or for their kids, something where they'd be getting screen time that might help, kind of, she really spends a lot of time on issues like teaching kids like self-regulation techniques to deal with their own anxiety. It was a nice little event. So it's Child Wellness Institute of New Jersey at Facebook Live. Oh, and Bree's got their link right there in the chat box.
Bree, you're rocking this.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. A couple of other things that we found that we're going to make sure is available to you guys. Child Welfare League of America has a very, very robust resource page with many different things that you'll find helpful. Some of us are overlapping each other, but there were some things there that I hadn't seen before. And we'd also want to make sure that you've got the link to the Google document, the Google file that's got the articles that we pulled from the academic library yesterday.
Thanks for joining us. Today I want to cover the following areas.
So for folks who are on the phone all across the nation, I would imagine, we'd love to hear from you about how you're supporting families while still trying to promote social distancing and physical distancing. What are you guys doing out there?
One of the high-risk groups, or you are a business or one of their employees, in all of our lives. And
One of the hopes we had for these Zoom chats is to make it collaborative and not so much a webinar, but just really a mutual exchange of information. So although this has really grown to a lot of folks, close to 100 or over 100, definitely feel free to chime in to share what's happening locally.
thank you to each and every one of you that has chosen to follow.
I was thinking another resource we might share with folks. Dr. Bruce Perry just came out with a nice little video, and I'm going to get the link and send. But it basically talks about how in these difficult times, even folks who, you know, that we're all experiencing stress, and that in these difficult times, you know, how do we get a feeling of predictability and control, and about daily structure. You might want to take a look at that. And he truly coined this phrase about how do we stay physically separate but emotionally close. But he does an excellent job in the video that you could share with folks about how the families we serve are particularly vulnerable, and we want to make sure, and they looked at a lot of the research that was done after Katrina about how that chaotic, severe, prolonged, uncontrollable can be a difficult piece, how we as professionals can help drift it to resilience. So, and I'm going to share that link also. And it might be great to just hear from folks about how are you coping? What are you doing in your daily routine to help yourself with your daily structure, and, you know, anyone be willing to share? I'm going to start. Melinda, do you want to, or I see you out there. Do you want to share the resources you had sent me earlier? I'm looking for it right now to share with folks.
We do have a response in the chat box. Kathy Evans Brown said, we are checking in with families regularly, assessing their basic needs, food, Wi-Fi, accessibility, etc. We continue to use social distancing via FaceTime, WhatsApp, etc.
Stacy?
Yes.
Okay, good. Everyone can hear me. I had to go back to my email to find the exact name of the agency that sent these great resources out just today, evidently, and it's End Violence Against Children. It's an organization. I'm sure some of you have heard of it or associated with it. And they have out a great set of resources for parents on how to deal with the COVID-19 virus and with their children at the same time.
Thank you. I'm looking for it so I can share it with everybody. Thank you, Melinda.
I am as well.
So one question that I have, call on our collective experience, different communities are dealing in different ways with the fact that there's kind of the digital divide, that some of the families we need to stay in touch with the most might be least likely to have access to technology. Has anybody's community come up with a way to expand access to internet to low-income families who maybe didn't have it before? Has anyone heard or seen of any good initiatives?
We have something here in the chat box that was right on time. Someone's CAC called the Gingerbread House is making videos and posting them on Facebook, educating families about how to teach body safety to kids. And they'll be posting other videos in the future. But Janet, maybe you were actually inquiring about phones and laptops and things of this nature for people who are just disconnected.
Yes, if we're hearing of any good initiatives about how we're getting smartphones or tablets to families that are otherwise cut off.
Hi, this is Greta from New York City, and the Department of Education has provided laptops for the students, and they partnered with Spectrum, which is one of the cable providers out here, to offer them Wi-Fi as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds mentioned that her schools in her area are providing laptops for students as well. So thanks, Greta. Thanks, Tricia. Stephanie Beasley commented that some carriers of internet in her area are providing free internet services and offering reduced internet fees that'll be income based.
And Elba, I see Kareem.
Yeah.
You want to share with us what you put in the chat box for people who can't read the chat box? What you put in the chat box. Well, that person's district is all schools in the area are issuing Chromebooks with hotspots to any family member in need. So that's wonderful to hear about.
Stacy mentioned Katrina, and I recently gave a talk, and I was looking for research really addressing the needs of kids that are in the midst of disaster and that will be disaster survivors. And really most of the research I found that's as recent as can be was coming out of Katrina. And so I'm wondering, is anyone out there really putting together presentations and educational materials specifically tailored to the needs of children in disaster? In other words, a lot of our discussion has been about providing the mental health services that we were in the midst of providing before COVID-19 came. What about doing something really tailored to meeting the needs of kids who are in disaster? Is that happening anywhere?
So, great question, Mar. And I believe NCAC put out a great document to deal with disasters, one that I relied on in running a CAC and, dealing with Katrina and the aftermath. So I'm search for that right now. But I don't know if others know of, I'm sure there are more.
The National Child Traumatic Stress Network has a core focusing on disaster. So that would be another resource to look to, would be the nctsn.org website. And while I'm speaking, I just want to thank everybody for all the ideas and all their input. Thanks, Stacy. And this, all this warmed my heart, so I decided to take down my snowy, wintry picture from Salt Lake and put up a beautiful sunset from San Diego.
Yeah, that was APSAC President Dr. David Corwin. So,
Janet, I was looking at some of the other questions that came in. We did have folks asking if we were potentially planning any virtual prevention activities at APSAC in lieu of pinwheel planting ceremonies. And one thing that we could tell folks or preview is that we are going to put out some potential backgrounds, virtual backgrounds. Dr. Corwin just helped me remember that. And we hope to put those out for membership that you can use them. Although I can't seem to get mine to work, but we have directions that go with it. And, with pinwheels and different things and hashtags that you can utilize. So we will have some virtual backgrounds that folks can use for Child Abuse Prevention Month that we hope coming to all of you in the next week.
Is there a possibility of getting in front of the background someone from APSAC to speak for just a few minutes so that their, the reason for the pinwheel ceremonies and the reason that we're doing what we're doing can be communicated to those that are listening?
Yes. If you're doing an event and would like a member of our national board to be on your event, let us know the time and place, and I'm sure we'll find someone that's available to log into your event.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd also like to point out that if during this time you've got to focus on staff development, APSAC spent about 2 years developing an online course. We launched it about 2 months ago, and we're making all 29 lectures available to members for like $25 for the whole package. And we're offering group rates. So if you want to like have your whole staff maybe pick the modules that are relevant to work you're doing and use them for in-services. So while we think $25 is really reasonable, we're not even going to let that get in the way if somebody really wants to use these lectures with their staff. So Bree just put up the link at apsac.org/online. Click through, take a look at who the speakers are and what the topics are, and we would really encourage you to take advantage of it while it's still really low priced, and consider it as something to use for staff development while you're all working virtually for a while. Is there anything else that we might be able to compile for you, add to our resource page? At the end of this call, I'm going to ask Alana to launch a poll that's going to kind of get your impression if folks want to join us. Last week, there was less talk from APSAC and more talk from the audience. So we would encourage this to be more interactional. But if having didactic information presentations like something on telehealth with experts is helpful, we certainly can switch gears and recast these as information sharing webinars. As your professional society, we're here to meet your needs, which in this environment, we're not quite sure what they are until they actually arise. So we just need you to let us know, and we'll pivot and make sure we address them. So as we come to the top of the hour, Alana, are there any last questions or comments? Dr. Corwin, Dr. Maddox, Stacy, anybody want to jump in on behalf of APSAC?
I'd just like to thank everyone again for attending, and note that APSAC's working as hard as it can to try to figure out how to post useful resources, links. We received one today from Korea, which was ahead of the United States in dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic. A couple of videos that the Korean Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry has developed to help children and families deal with the COVID pandemic in Korea. Michelle Matson-Thompson has developed some resilience-based tools that she's sharing with APSAC. We'll put them on a website, resources. So please share anything that you find really valuable. And I received a letter communication that went out to all of our Department of Pediatrics from our leader, Angelo Giardino, the chair, which had a number of very useful tips for how to increase our interaction and social connectedness while we go through this period of isolation in our homes and away from where our usual groups of people. And we'll also post those on the APSAC resources to help us deal with COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I see a number of people thanking us in the chat box. That's wonderful. It's our pleasure. We appreciate it. I'm seeing someone saying telehealth info would be great. We need to look at our states who have successfully implemented this. Okay, we are, if you will stand by with us, we're going to launch a poll and get some information from you. Apparently, I'm the one that has to do that, so I'm going to disappear and get that going. In the meantime, please keep your comments coming and hang in until we can get to that poll.
And I might be part of the problem, so I'm going to log out real quick.
Well, why don't you see if you can't launch the poll if you're logged in?
Sorry, I don't have the option for the poll, but I think having multiple people logged in through the Zoom login is part of the problem. So I'm going to log out and see if that gives others the ability. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Bree, for all you're doing. And I think we can do the poll through email, correct?
Yes, but last week we got very low response. We got great reviews, but low response to the poll. The poll seems to be we're new at this, so bear with us. If you could, we're going to send out an email with a link. If you'd be so kind as to take a minute and respond, we would be very, very appreciative. That helps us better be able to serve you. So on that note, we wish everybody safety and health, and surround yourself with the love of everybody you can, so you've got the strength you need to serve the clients that we all need to serve. So thank you and good day.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.